With 146 days until the midterm election, we record today on Flag Day. And for our YouTube audience, you can see that I'm wearing my American flag t-shirt.
I forgot. I'm sorry.
It says freedom, which is a big F word that we have here, freedom. So it is Flag Day. Interesting that Flag Day, Kurt, falls within Pride Month, when rainbow flags are everywhere. And as I said on my morning show this morning, I'm okay if you display those rainbow flags, which they're doing everywhere. But just remember that what protects those rainbow flags is the red, white, and blue flag. Because there are countries where it's not okay to be gay, where they throw you off buildings for being gay. That doesn't happen in the United States of America. So think about that and display your pride in the American flag, if you will, today on Flag Day and throughout the rest of the year. Today, chickens are coming home to roost, feel-good legislation, which, as you know, is my favorite, and the tank is on E. All of that and a lot more on this episode of Dale Carter's America.
From the heart of flyover country, he's not on the far right, and he's certainly not on the far left. Like you, he's somewhere in the middle. This is Dale Carter's America.
Before we get to the news, obviously, a week from tonight, we are going to be at Funhouse Pizza in Lee's Summit, Jim Dingman's awesome restaurant there, pizza and beer for everybody, and it's going to be open mic night on Dale Carter's America.
Yeah, that's right. So we just talked about this earlier, so we're going to get through the news and all that kind of stuff, and we have some people, former guests of the podcast, friends, you know, in influential positions, let's say, things like that. So we're going to have some guests on, and then we'll also open it up. So if you're coming out to Funhouse Pizza, you know, come with some questions or gripes or, you know, a good Joe Biden impression or something like that. We'll get you on the air.
Yeah. Yeah. You can go right down the street to John Knox Village in Lee's Summit, and maybe we can find a Joe Biden lookalike.
You might even find Joe Biden. You never know.
Did I say that with my outside voice? Today, as we mentioned, is Flag Day in the country. It was on June 14th, back in 1777, that the Continental Congress decided that this young country needed a flag. Mm-hmm. And they said, we think 13 stripes, red and white alternating, and a sea of blue with a circle of 13 stars to denote the new constellation that's in our orbit now. And now for every new state we've added a star. And we've kept the 13 stripes, and that's your American flag, except in Washington, D.C. The District of Columbia today, Kurt, is flying a 51-star flag.
Really?
Because they want to be the 51st state. The city of 700,000 Democrats wants to be a state so they can get a couple of senators, a congressperson, 3 electoral votes.
They actually made a new flag?
Yeah, they did, and they're flying a 51-star flag.
That.
Yeah. So, you know what? I have mixed feelings about that. Number one, I don't want to see D.C. entered as a state because the demographics do not work for me. But also, I mean, it was set up through the Constitution as a separate entity because they didn't want it in a state.
Right.
I mean, if they want to be in a state, you know, it's part Virginia, part Maryland, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, it was part Virginia, part Maryland before it was set
Virginia
up
took their land back?
I don't know exactly what happened, but I mean, if you look at just the geography, it is, you know, part of, it's like cut out. It's like a square, you know, so it's cut out of Virginia and Maryland with the Potomac River being the dividing line between the two states. And yeah, I mean, it's supposed to be the seat of government. You know, I don't think that the founders and the people who, you know, built Washington, D.C. necessarily thought of it as like a place where a bunch of people live, you know. For example, it's supposed to be the seat of government, and that's the purpose of Washington, D.C. So that's unfortunate for those people that have decided to live there. Maybe they shouldn't be living there anyways for other reasons. I mean, crime is not too good in Washington, D.C. right now. But
well, where I have mixed feelings about it is because I feel like because their license plates say taxation without representation. I've always loved that.
Yeah.
And I always equate that to Kansas City, Missouri, where I pay 1%. You live in Kansas City, Missouri, though, right?
I live in Raytown now.
Okay, you live in Raytown. But you work in Kansas City, Missouri, so they're still going to get their little bite of your paycheck, and you have no vote anymore in that.
Yeah, now I get to gripe about it just like you do because I moved out of the city.
That's why I kind of feel for the folks in Washington, D.C., you know, because people will say the same thing to me. You don't have to work at KFKF.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess, but it's a little bit different because we're talking. You still have representation. I mean, it's not quite the same thing, but I guess it is analogous. But yeah,
so I
don't
have
know.
mixed feelings about it, but I still don't like it that they're flying a 51-star flag.
Well, let's just be clear about one thing too.
Okay.
The Democrats in D.C. don't care about representation. It's not about the fact that, oh, we're not represented in D.C., we need to add it as a state. The reason they want to add it as a state is because it's like 95% Democrat.
Right. They get two senators out of it.
They get 2 Democrat senators. They get a Democrat congressman. They get 3 Democrat electoral college votes guaranteed. Yeah. That's the only reason they care about it.
But
let's not pretend like this is
I don't think the Democrats give a shit one way or the other.
Yeah.
Other than what you just said, I'm talking about the people who live there.
Right.
I feel for them in that they're paying federal income taxes into a system where they don't have any representation. Much like we are paying Kansas City, Missouri, and we have no representation in Kansas City, Missouri.
I understand.
That's a lot of time to spend on issue number 1.
Yeah, this is going to be a long podcast.
On down. May inflation up 8.6% year over year. That's atrocious. Mm-hmm. Gas has leveled off, though, at $5.01 a gallon nationally. Great. 3 days in a row, the same national average. Food was up more than 10%, biggest increase in 41 years. Now, why is food up so much? Relates to energy. Diesel prices, you know where they are, and everything is delivered.
Yep.
So it all goes back upstream to energy prices and especially diesel prices.
Well, and not to mention, the worker shortage that a lot of industries are facing. That applies to agriculture and the food industry and everything as well. And then you have Bill Gates buying up all the farms and everything else. So
it's crazy times. The Dow, I don't know where it is right now as we do the podcast, but since January, the Dow has dropped 6,000 points. 6,000 points. And even the Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, I mentioned this last week. I don't know that I mentioned Janet Yellen and what she said about it. But basically, she's saying that this is going on. The economy is going the wrong way, and it's Putin's fault. And what I said last week is, why aren't we leading? If Vladimir Putin has this much control over our economy, if that little skirmish over there in the Ukraine, Russia versus Ukraine, it was a bigger deal when Russia invaded Afghanistan, for crying out loud, a much bigger country. Why aren't we leading?
Yeah.
Why aren't we sending diplomats over there? High-level discussions need to be going on. Why aren't we leading?
Well, it's possible. This is a very cynical view, but it's possible that they're just letting it happen and letting it be drawn out because it's a scapegoat. It's somebody to blame the prices on. Just yesterday, I think it was yesterday, Joe Biden was at the AFL-CIO conference or whatever, and he was blaming the gas prices, the high gas prices, on Putin yet again.
First, I'm doing everything in my power to blunt Putin's gas price hike. Just since he invaded Ukraine, it's gone up $1.74 a gallon because of nothing else but that.
So, if we do something about that and solve the problem or encourage negotiation between Russia and Ukraine, then that scapegoat goes away. We can't blame Putin for high gas prices anymore.
Here's an out-of-the-box thought. If the economy didn't go in the tank, perhaps they wouldn't get slaughtered the way they're going to get slaughtered in the midterm election.
Yeah.
Perhaps Joe Biden's approval rating wouldn't be at 36%. There are benefits to solving problems. That's why you send people to government.
Yeah.
It's like, solve the problem.
Right.
Don't make it really bad and then go, oh, not my fault.
Yeah.
Putin's fault. And that gets back. I mentioned last week that I watched that miniseries on the History Channel on Theodore Roosevelt, which was amazing. If you love history, you got to go watch that. And one of the things I didn't mention on the podcast last week, I think is very germane to what's going on right now. When there was a coal strike in this country going into the dead of winter, okay, you had the coal companies on one side, the UAW or UMW on the other side, and Roosevelt called both sides to the White House. And he sat him down and he said, okay, I get you. You're representing the companies. I get you guys. You're representing the striking workers. I'm the president. I represent the people of the United States of America. Let's come to some sort of solution here. There is no Teddy Roosevelt in the White House.
No, for sure. And you might even say there hasn't been for a long time. I mean, presidents are...
Trump may have come closest.
Yeah.
Because Trump was kind of, he was not your boilerplate politician.
Right.
And much like Teddy Roosevelt wasn't a boilerplate politician. Trump would be a guy who would bring people in and sit them down and say, let's fix this.
Yeah. Maybe not on something like that, like a dispute between workers and industry and stuff like that, because I don't think really that's as big of an issue now in general, but he certainly did that with foreign policy, for example, helping negotiate deals between various Middle Eastern countries. And all
one
that.
way out of the hole that we're in terms of energy could be solved that way.
Yeah.
And Biden is just not the guy to do that. All he's saying is, I'm going to keep my hands off. I'm going to let the Fed do what the Fed does. And now we know that the Fed is expected to raise interest rates 0.75%. That is the highest one-time hike since 1994. They're trying to get ahead of inflation, but inflation is hovering around 9%. And, what's the Fed rate right now? Is it even 1%?
I don't know.
Yeah. So they're going to have to raise it quite a bit if they want to try and tame inflation that way. We get back to the reason we have the high inflation, which, again, Biden says is not true, is that, he put $2 trillion worth of monopoly money into the system, and that's why we have it. I saw on MSNBC, of all places, an Obama economic advisor actually tell the truth. Mm-hmm. And he said, we really need to thank Joe Manchin, because had Joe Manchin not pulled his vote from this, it wouldn't have been $2 trillion. It would have been $6 trillion. Can you imagine where we'd be if that had happened?
Yeah, I can't even imagine. And, I'm certainly no financial policy expert, but it seems like it's all kind of going in the same direction. Like it's all just devaluing the currency, devaluing the American dollar, not only for us, but on the world stage, as the reserve currency and everything else. And we're just kind of like leapfrogging over each other. Is it going to be the inflation? Is it going to be the interest rate from the Fed? They're just like out competing each other to see who can go the highest, and that's not how you solve the problem. You solve the problem by reducing spending, by letting the dollar actually work and giving people purchasing power, not by spending more money.
Just another thing that has been screwed up since Joe Biden took the oath of office. The ratings on the January 6th primetime hearings, did you see that?
I didn't see the hearing. I didn't see the ratings either.
6% of the country watched. 6%. It was across 11 platforms, and 6% of the country watched.
Yeah. I don't think anyone really cares too much except for like the diehard leftists, And it's interesting because everyone was going after Fox News last week because Fox News was like the one major cable news channel that did not air the live hearings. And, there were stories from NPR and Washington Post and everyone else like, Fox News is trying to hide the truth about January 6th. They're not airing it. My question is not why Fox News is not airing it. It's why are these other stations airing it,
Yeah. Well, to your point, I think what they're finding is Americans care more about gas prices and what they're paying at the grocery store than they care about what happened on January 6th. I mean, I kept this story out. Let's see. Yeah, the trial of a man who carried the Confederate flag through the U.S. Capitol during the January 6th riot begins today. A grand jury indicted Kevin Seafried in April of last year on 5 charges connected to the 2021 attack. Apparently, what he and his son did was they got into the Capitol through a broken window, and they ran through the Capitol with a Confederate flag. For that, he was indicted a year ago. His trial hasn't happened yet. And how long does this stuff go on?
They just are really counting on the fear-mongering working, that people are going to care about some guy carrying a flag through the Capitol and care about that more than the fact that 25 people were shot in Chicago over the weekend.
Yeah.
Care more about the fact that than the fact that they're paying $5 a gallon for gas, and all these other things. More about that than all of the lootings that are happening in major cities. I mean, go on Twitter and look at the videos of stores being just ransacked. And, there's real problems in this country, and they're trying to obfuscate that because they want to, try and dampen the effects that this midterm election is going to have. So it's all about January 6th.
We're going to talk about the chickens coming home to roost on several levels. That's one of the bigger topics on the podcast today. But it does seem to me that the Democrats know how to play Donald Trump. They really do, because they've gone with these hearings that no one cares about, and yet Donald Trump has issued a 12-page rebuttal. Why? Why doesn't he just let this go and just move on? But he continues to repeat his claims that the presidential election was stolen from him in November of 2020. Regardless of how you feel about that, that was 2.5 years ago, and this country has bigger problems right now. And I think it's interesting to me, because if you look at the 2020 campaign, perfect storm for the Democrats, okay? They've got Joe Biden, who is terrible in public. He can't put 3 words together without sticking his foot in his mouth. He gets to campaign from his basement, okay? And the only message that they had was Donald Trump has to go. Donald Trump is a bad guy. And really, that's all these what these hearings are all about. It's basically it's a one-sided trial with just the prosecution, and they want you to come away thinking Donald Trump is a bad guy. Okay, well, you don't think Donald Trump's a bad guy. On a lot of levels, I don't think Donald Trump's a bad guy. Leftist Democrats all think he's a really bad guy. Nobody is changing their opinion. So Biden did not have to campaign. He got to sit in his basement. They sold the message that Donald Trump's a bad guy. So all the Democrats vote for Biden because they would still vote for Biden.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They'll definitely vote for him again.
Biden.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you got the people in the middle that went, this Trump guy, he's not such a good guy. So Joe Biden did not win this election. Can we agree on that?
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, it's more than just that. It was also COVID. I mean, COVID was the big thing. Not only did they improperly use that as a political cudgel against Donald Trump, but they inflated, all of this fear mongering about COVID, and then used that in order to historically, in a way that's never been done before, change the election process,
and then tried to solidify it
in order to favor the Democrats.
Right.
And so that's part of it too. It's not just Donald Trump; it's everything else. And I find it very ironic and interesting because you'll have Democrats and you'll have like rhino Republicans like Liz Cheney, who is the vice chair of this, or whatever they call it, of this January 6th council. And she'll come out and she'll say things like, well, the Republican Party is the party of Donald Trump, and they're obsessed with Donald Trump, and they just can't get over Donald Trump. Like, he's not president anymore. Move on.
We have too many people now in the Republican Party who are not taking their responsibility seriously, and who have pledged their allegiance and loyalty to Donald Trump. I mean, it is fundamentally antithetical. It is contrary to everything conservatives believe to embrace a personality cult, and yet that is what so many in my party are doing today.
Is the Republican Party a personality cult?
I think that large segments of it have certainly become that.
A cult?
Yeah. I mean, I think there is absolutely a cult of personality around Donald Trump.
Which is like, and meanwhile, they're spending all this time talking about Donald Trump. Yeah, why aren't you moving on? You're spending all this time on January 6th trying to rehash everything that happened, trying to rehash Donald Trump, Orange Man bad, Orange Man bad. It's all they have. It's all they have. And they are begging Donald Trump to run in 2024 because they will continue this whole process of Orange Man bad up and through the next presidential election.
Well, before you get to the next presidential election, we have the midterm, and January 6th, we've said it before, is their firewall. This is like their Hail Mary pass. This is, Patrick Mahomes to Travis Kelce on an 80-yard touchdown pass. I mean, this is what they're trying to do, and it's not working. America doesn't care. And they're voting in droves in these primary elections that are happening leading up to it, and you're just seeing records set. They can't wait to get to the general election in November. I have never seen the Republican Party so motivated to change.
Yeah. I mean, I think there is definitely a big groundswell of conservative and right-wing activism, which I think is great, but we just need to continue it. We need to keep the ball rolling.
That's what we're doing on the podcast. We're
Absolutely.
keeping the ball rolling. Joey B, meanwhile, who doesn't do very many interviews at all, has done very few interviews, went on television with Jimmy Kimmel. Did you see any of this?
So what I did was...
It's so cringeworthy.
I sat down at home. I was like, I'm going to try and get through this. I put it on YouTube. I got through about 10 minutes, and I just had to turn it off. It's just terrible. I mean, Jimmy Kimmel... himself, just like he's assisting
He's a flaming liberal.
Yeah, and there are certain moments, and I'll try and find some clips, but there are certain moments where you can see Biden like losing his train of thought, where he starts going off the rails, and then Jimmy's like, "Oh yeah, this is what you mean, right?" And it just like comes in and saves him right away.
Well, here's the moment that I hope that you can find, because this show, so you know, is taped in the afternoon. It's not live.
Right.
It's to tape, much like we do with the podcast.
Right.
Okay. So you have the President of the United States on with you. You can let him talk forever.
Yeah.
You can put a break wherever you need to put the break after the fact. And there's one place where Biden is off the rails and he's just like, and Jimmy is sitting next to him very close, puts his hand on his forearm and goes, "We're going to take a break right here."
Right. That's what I'm talking about. That's exactly
throwing
what I'm
him the
talking
life preserver.
Yeah.
No question
So there's
about
a
it.
lot of major things we've done. But what we haven't done is we haven't been able to communicate it in a way that is, let me say another way.
Well, see, that's kind of perfect. Yeah,
Well,
we haven't been able to communicate
But
it.
look how the press has changed. Look how the press has changed.
It has changed. Oh, listen, I get it.
I know you overstand it.
Yeah.
You don't just understand it, you overstand it. But here's the deal. One of the things is that it's very difficult now to have even with notable exceptions, even the really good reporters, they have to get the number of clicks on the nightly news. So instead of asking a question, anyway, everything gets sensationalized in ways but I'm convinced we can get through this. We have to get through it. And one of the things, look,
I'm going to take a break, and then we'll talk a little bit more,
I
if you
don't
don't
blame
mind.
you.
I'm sorry. We have some of those commercials. We have some biracial commercials we need to show.
That's where we are with this president, and we're going to get into some of that with the chickens coming home to roost here in a bit. But then I saw this last night. This is the last thing I want to hit in the news segment. Joey B was on the tarmac yesterday, and somebody asked him, "Are you going to Saudi Arabia?" And he goes, "No, not going to Saudi Arabia." And then within 25 seconds, he goes, "Well, I'm not going over there to talk about energy. We've got a lot of other big issues that we've got to talk about." So you are going to Saudi Arabia.
Have you decided, sir, whether to go to Saudi Arabia?
No, not yet.
What would be the holding up the decision at this point? Are there commitments you're waiting for from the Saudis or on the negotiations over peace talks?
The commitments from the Saudis don't relate to anything having to do with energy. It happens to be a larger meeting taking place in Saudi Arabia. That's the reason I'm going. And it has to do with national security for them, for Israelis. I have a program. Anyway, it has to do with much larger issues than having to do with the energy.
And then they ask his spokesmodel there in the briefing room, "Is the president going to Saudi Arabia or not?" And she's looking for the answer in the book. You've seen this, right?
Thanks, Green. On Saudi Arabia, briefly, just to circle back on Darlene's question, the president seemed to say over the weekend that his trip would not focus on energy. You said just now that any trip to the region will focus on delivering results for the American people. If that's the case, why not make energy a major topic of the trip, considering gas prices are such a big part of what...
Let me first say, there's no trip to announce at this point. I'm just saying that there's nothing to preview for you at this time, but I'll say this. To view engagement with Saudi Arabia on energy security as asking for oil is simply wrong, and a misunderstanding of both the complexity of that issue and our multifaceted discussions with the Saudis. That said, Saudi Arabia is the chair, as you know, of OPEC Plus and its largest exporter. Of course, we discuss energy with Saudi government as we do with oil producers around the world, and we welcome its leadership in achieving a consensus amongst the group members last week.
And she goes, well, we don't have any direction on that right now. So we don't know where the hell the president's going. Is he going or not going?
They just took off, and Air Force One is just flying in circles above Washington, D.C.
Oh, man. And we've still got, 146 to the midterm, but it's like 900 days more of the Joey B presidency.
This countdown thing, man, we got to talk about this. It's depressing. Can we just do maybe once a month or something like that?
The number's getting smaller.
Yeah, but it's not getting smaller fast enough.
Well, I can't make time go any faster. I really can't.
Yeah.
Okay, so next Tuesday, we are going to be at Funhouse Pizza on 50 Highway in Lee Summit. We're going to gather at about 5 o'clock
Yes.
Okay, so come in, we'll shake hands, we'll hug each other's necks, we'll eat some pizza, we'll drink some beer or whatever, and then we're going to do the podcast live. Well, sort of live. We're going to tape it.
Right.
That way, if any of you people offend me, we can just cut that part right out. Kidding.
If anyone makes fun of your hair, you got pissed off when I did that, so we'll cut that part out too.
Did you make fun of my hair?
Yeah.
Don't make fun of my hair. Anyway, Bob Watson's going to be there.
Yeah.
Bob's a very dear friend, and he's one of the sponsors of the podcast. And Bob is coming back from the national convention of State Farm agents, and he's got like some shirts made up. I mean, he's bringing some tchotchke items. He's going to have door prizes. We're going to have concert tickets. It's gonna be a really fun night. So if you listen to this podcast, I hope that you can make time to do it. We tried to do it at a convenient time for you and for me, because I got to get up at 2 a.m.
Right.
So I'm not staying there all night. You want to stay all night with those people? You go for it.
We'll see. I might stay for a little bit. But yeah, next Tuesday, June 21st, 5 p.m. At Funhouse Pizza in Lee Summit. And it's on
50 Highway.
50 Highway.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Now, and there's some construction in that area, so make sure you follow all the detours and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of on like the access road,
like
on
an
the
outer
side.
road.
Yeah, the outer road. Yeah.
So if you need insurance, Bob Watson is your guy. He's a face you can put with your insurance needs. He's not some anonymous 800 number that's got like a gecko or something as their spokesmodel, or an emu, or whatever the spokesmodels
or some
are.
annoying lady that talks in a weird accent and has
exactly
goofy hair.
You're not going to get that person. You're not going to get the gecko. You're not going to get the emu. I mean, but when you call State Farm and you call 816-229-7878, you're going to get Bob Watson, who's a guy who's been doing this for 5 decades in both Kansas and Missouri. His office is in Blue Springs, but that doesn't mean anything. He's got folks all over the map, and he can take care of your auto, home, life, commercial insurance, even boats. He's licensed in Missouri and Kansas. Bob Watson is the official insurance agent of this podcast, and he's my personal insurance agent.
Yep, right on.
We call this next segment, The Chickens Are Coming Home to Roost, because they really are. It's almost like America's waking up and going, what the hell did we do? What did we do?
At least some Americans are.
Even in liberal places, Kurt. I mean, San Francisco. Does it get more liberal than Nancy Pelosi's hometown?
I don't know.
They've got a DA out there who ran on, equity and, making sure that criminals are taken care of and all this crap. And the criminals are out there going, oh, yeah, man, we love this guy. Well, his soft on crime approach got him recalled in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Is that not a large chicken coming home to roost?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure Nancy Pelosi will still get reelected. She was just on RuPaul's Drag Race recently.
I saw a clip from that.
And she went on there and said that drag queens are what America is all about, and blah, blah. Disgusting, honestly.
Are drag queens what America's all about?
I
mean, they exist
so.
because we are the land of the free and the home of the brave. It is Flag Day, and that American flag protects your right to do a lot of things that you and I might not agree with, but that's what America is all about. It is true. But it's protected by the flag on my shirt. Okay, so if you want a pride flag, this is your pride flag.
But there's a difference between saying you have a right to do something and saying that it's what America's all about.
By the way, Nancy Pelosi is not going to be the Speaker of the House moving forward. It's going to be the Republicans taking over the House in a very large way. I would bet my entire IRA on that.
Yeah.
And your 401k, if you have one, if it hasn't completely gone poof.
It's probably not as much as yours.
Yeah. I would bet the farm on that. So
but she'll still get reelected.
Why would she want to? She's in her 80s. She's been Speaker of the House twice. Why would she want to just be a backbench?
She'll still get on TV. She'll still get, all the good speaking engagements. She'll still get to rub elbows with all the world leaders and everything like that. Of course, she's not going anywhere.
Okay, so more chickens coming home to roost. Schumer goes on the steps of the Supreme Court and calls out, Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh.
And they're taking away fundamental rights. I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions.
And then guess what happens? Some disturbed person goes to Kavanaugh's house with a gun and duct tape and bindings and whatever the hell else he had, and it's an assassination attempt.
Yep.
Now, you wouldn't know that watching mainstream media because they buried it like a cat turd.
Yeah.
But it was true. So his rant, you can almost draw a direct line, led to that. And still, in contravention of federal law, okay, you still have protesters in front of his house. You got protesters seeking out Amy Coney Barrett's church and school where her kids go to school.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the line here?
I mean, is that not like many times worse than January 6th? We have a direct line, like you said, from quasi-threatening statements being made by sitting members of Congress, and then somebody going out and making an assassination attempt on a Supreme Court justice. We have the press secretary for the President of the United States and other high-ranking officials endorsing and encouraging illegal activity of people protesting in front of and harassing private citizens and Supreme Court justices.
I know that there's an outrage right now, I guess, about protests that have been peaceful to date, and we certainly continue to encourage that outside of judges' homes, and that's the president's position.
And there's no investigation. Nobody cares about it.
No.
It was mentioned on, I believe, 0 of the major Sunday shows.
Yeah, they didn't cover it at all.
ABC, NBC,
Right.
CNN, CBS, none of them talked about it.
Right.
I mean, imagine if it was the other way around. Imagine if it was Elena Kagan. Imagine if it was Ruth Bader Ginsburg when she was still alive. You know, the holy, sacred Ruth Bader Ginsburg. If somebody went and said, "Oh, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, you're going to pay the consequences," and then somebody goes and tries to kill her, we never hear the end of it.
No, we wouldn't, and we shouldn't. I mean, I want to make sure we're on the right side of this because it is illegal, and we don't want to live in a country where our court system becomes like some banana republic, and it's like, well, if you don't like what a judge is about to do, you'll just go threaten to kill them.
Right.
That happens in banana republics. It does not happen in the United States of America. You know, and to your point, I mean, can you imagine if the Second Amendment were under fire and a bunch of folks who support gun rights showed up at Sotomayor or Kagan's house?
Yeah.
You know, you talk about January 6th, there would be hearings, there would be all kinds of stuff on that. So they're very hypocritical at the least on that. I wanted to move on to an article that was in the New York Times. Have you heard about this? They reached out to 50 high-level Democrats. Some of them anonymous, some of them put their names on this stuff, and they asked them, should Joe Biden be the nominee in 2024? The circular firing squad has begun, and I've highlighted some things out of the article that I want to share here. So it was interviews with nearly 50 Democratic officials, from county leaders to members of Congress, as well as with disappointed voters who backed Mr. Biden in 2020. They reveal a party alarmed about Republicans' rising strength and extraordinarily pessimistic about an immediate path forward. To say our country was on the right track would flagrantly depart from reality. That's Steve Simonettis. I don't know. He's a Democratic National Committee member from Miami. He says that immediately after the midterm, President Biden should announce his intent not to seek re-election.
See if he listens.
Coming from his own party.
He's been repeatedly saying that he's going to run for re-election. So,
well, yeah.
And even the press secretary put out a tweet, I think yesterday or the day before that, you know, to the same effect. The president has clearly stated that he plans on running for re-election.
Does the president have the stamina, physically and mentally, do you think, to continue on even after 2024?
Don, you're asking me this question. Oh my gosh, he's the president of the United States. You know, I can't even keep up with it. We just got back from New Mexico. We just got back from California. That is not a question that we should be even asking. Just look at the work that he does. Look how he's delivering for the American public. Look, that article that we're talking about is hearsay. It's salacious. That's not what we care about. We care about how are we going to deliver for the American people? How are we going to make their lives better? That's what the president talks about. That is his focus. And that's where we're going to continue to focus on.
David Axelrod, you know that name. Mm-hmm. The presidency is a monstrously taxing job, and the stark reality is the president would be closer to 90 than 80 at the end of a second term, and that would be a major issue.
Yeah.
So the Democrats are closing ranks, and there's all kinds of stuff. And who is there? And they don't view Kamala Harris as a replacement either. Few Democrats interviewed expect that high-profile leaders with White House ambitions would defer to Vice President Harris, who has had a series of political hiccups of her own in office. This is the New York Times.
That's one way of putting it. Political
Talking
hiccups.
to just Democrats. So what's the bench for the Democrats? I mean, we talk about DeSantis all the time.
Yeah.
We talk about the senator from South Carolina. We talk about lots of folks who could jump in there as a nominee for the Republicans. Here's the bench for the Democrats. Amy Klobuchar, Bernie Sanders. Isn't Bernie like 90?
I think Bernie's older than Joe Biden.
He is.
I might be wrong about that.
Elizabeth Warren. I mean, this is this is retread city. Cory Booker.
Oh, God.
Pete Buttigieg.
He's probably the best one, to be honest. I mean,
Yeah.
he's the best chance they have, I think. But
Well, I mean, he did take 12 weeks of paternity leave.
I'm not saying I like him. I'm just saying politically he's their best bet.
And Beto O'Rourke.
Oh, God.
That's their bench. Okay. So the last line that I would have from this story, and this story was a very long story, and you can bet this is going to be around for a while because Democrats are talking about this. The circle is getting smaller and smaller for Joe Biden. Sheila Huggins, a lawyer from Durham, North Carolina, she's a DNC committee member as well. She said Democrats need fresh, bold leadership for the 2024 race. That can't be Biden. These are Democrats.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, you have to think that they're going to depart from sort of the older class of Democrats, and they're going to pivot more towards this younger, far-left, progressive wing of Democrats, and that'll be the path moving forward.
Right. Well, it's time for a change, I think, demographically for both. I mean, Donald Trump's birthday is today. He's 76 years old. Mm-hmm. He'll be 78, at the next election. I just think, whether he has aspirations for it or not, I think it's time for a demographic shift in another direction. And maybe we're going to get that. And that's not just the Democrats here. I'm talking about Republicans as well. ChuckGrassley in Iowa was renominated for another run at the U.S. Senate out of Iowa. It would be his 8th 6-year term. ChuckGrassley will be 89 years old in September. We need. This is why that Article 5 thing, the Convention of States that we had the separate episode on.
Yeah.
And I hope they'll come to our live event.
Yeah. And just to pause on that, make sure that if you're listening to this or watching this, that you go back and watch that. It's up on our YouTube page and Spotify and everywhere else. Very interesting conversation. I really enjoyed that. So,
and term limits is one of their big deals.
Yeah.
And I didn't used to believe in that. I thought term limits were kind of a tool of a lazy electorate. But we have a lazy electorate.
We do.
Yeah.
I mean, it brings up the question of how are these people getting elected over and over again? Even Mitch McConnell. I mean, if we want to look at Republicans, even Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, these are just old, lame, boring people who are soft. They're not real conservatives. They're just elected Republicans. And I mean, Mitch McConnell has done some good things, I guess, but he's not a leader. He's not a conservative leader in the movement. We need new blood, fresh blood. And it just and then on the Democrat side, obviously, with people like Pelosi and Schumer and everyone else, I mean, who are the people that are enthusiastically going out and I'm going to pull the lever for Nancy Pelosi, why? I just don't understand it.
Well, it's on both sides, and we do need a demographic shift. Doesn't mean we need stupid people to run. And for that, I would mention Vice President Kamala Harris. But I will say this, there's a report, this came out June 10th, that Twitter is slow to remove racist tweets targeting Kamala Harris. The toxicity of our politics has just gotten to a point where, it used to be, Kurt, that I could say I disagree with my friends on the other side. Here's why I disagree, and I could list out why I disagree. I think we need a smaller government. I think we need to define what the government's role is, and then how do we pay for it? Not use the federal government as a social engineering tool. Okay, that's what I believe to my core. And the other side believes something completely differently. Now, where we are in our politics is it's not that I disagree with you, but you're wearing the wrong colored jersey, and I must destroy you and your entire family.
Yeah,
it's so toxic right now.
It is very toxic, and I mean, not to point fingers, but I guess to point fingers. I really think that started with the left, because it is this constant barrage of personal attacks, character assassination, fear-mongering from the left that has led us to where we are now, in my opinion. Constantly calling people racist, constantly saying that, white people are the problem. You can only take that so far before the other side of that is going to start saying, you know what, no, I'm not going to put up with this anymore. F you, and start throwing it back at them. So we need to definitely, I agree, we need to bring the temperature down, but bringing the temperature down means that the left is going to have to actually start playing on a fair playing field and actually start answering some questions without just immediately resorting to character assassination. And I just don't see that happening. So it's unfortunately not realistic, I think.
Well, I'll give you an example. I've got a friend who reached out to me about the podcast where he disagreed with me. And one of his issues is he thinks that the federal government should forgive all student loans. And you know how I feel about that. Okay, so I can have that argument. I can say, okay, you believe that, so you're saying that I should pay for your student loan because you don't want to.
Right.
Okay, I didn't say your family should die. Right? You should be deported from this country. That's where we need to get back to. We need to get back to where do we disagree? And honestly, sometimes with our disagreements, we come to the right answer.
Right.
Sometimes a little bit of what you wanted to do with what I want to do might work. Maybe sometimes a little bit of what I want to do with what you want to do will work.
Yeah,
it's called compromise.
Sure. And obviously, there are exceptions to the toxicity. I mean, there are plenty of people out there who you and I are able to have very reasonable conversations with, and that's what I would like to see. And I enjoy that very much. When I have people who are on the left, or more liberal or Democrats or whoever who are willing to engage in substantive conversation, I love doing that as much as I can. But I think where we have kind of shifted into this new thing with this kind of new conservative movement and things like that is conservatives and Republicans for too long have been trying to play defense. And they've been trying to be like, they're proposing some policy and it's like, you're a racist. They bring out the playbook.
Yeah.
And for too long, we've been going, no, I'm not a racist because blah, blah, blah. Oh, no, you're mischaracterization, and trying to reason with them as if it's going to work, as if they care about that. No, they don't care about that. They care about destroying you. And so I think a lot of people are realizing that the proper answer to you're a racist is not, no, I'm not because X, Y, Z. The proper answer is, no, you're an asshole.
I was going to say you're full of shit.
Yeah.
And here's what I think. Here's what the point I'm trying to make. That actually dovetails nicely into the second big topic here, and that is the gun update, which it seems like we've talked about for several of these podcast episodes. You went to an event, and we're going to drop a clip from that event. But go ahead and set that up and talk about what it is you were doing.
Sure. So on Saturday, we had a couple of big events in Kansas City. We had the Pride Festival, which I did not go to. And we had the March for Our Lives, which is one of the big national gun control organizations. And so I went a little bit. I had to get down to the lake for the award ceremony, which, by the way, congratulations on the award for KFKF.
Well, now that you've opened that door, we have to mention it, that KFKF was named by the Missouri Broadcasters Association as Radio Station of the Year.
Woo! Confetti!
No class, no format,
Absolutely.
Just the best radio station in the state of Missouri. So we got a little trophy, and we feel pretty good about it.
It's great. Great news. But that's why I wasn't able to stay for the whole event, because I had to get down to that. But I did go, and we interviewed some people, talked to some people about gun control and all of that. So it's up only on the YouTube and Rumble pages because it's very video heavy. I did not upload it to the audio only podcast platform. So you have to go to YouTube to watch it. Make sure that you go and subscribe as well. And yeah, it was very interesting. You know, I tried to be friendly. I tried to not be too confrontational. But
you asked some very basic questions and got some very interesting answers.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I asked things like, what is an assault weapon? What can we do to protect kids in school? And the more that I asked, you know, as this kind of typically goes, I didn't really get any good answers.
I'd like to see guns taken out of the hands of people that do not need them, and that includes all guns, but especially the AK automatic rifles that seem to be able to take down people in seconds.
Well, I think high-capacity weapons should be regulated. If you're a collector and you really want your bang-bang toy, that's fine, but you're going to have to face some certain harsh regulations in order to keep that.
Okay. I mean, you know, on self-defense, you know, I had people saying that Americans shouldn't have a right to self-defense, that owning a gun is a privilege that has to be granted to you by the government, and that, you know, if, for example, you're in a movie theater and somebody walks in with a gun, what are you going to do about it? Shoot back? And the question I answered in response to that was, what should I do? Just sit there and take the bullets? And the insinuation is basically, yeah, that's what you should do. Just sit there and take the bullets. So it's go watch the whole thing. I included all of the interviews that I did in full so that you have all the context there, and I'm not selectively editing or anything like that. So
yeah. Well, the guns continue to be a topic, obviously, after the mass shootings that have been happening here. A bipartisan group of senators have crafted a plan to reduce gun violence. The agreement includes enhanced review for gun buyers under the age of 21, incentives for states to enact red flag laws, blah, 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 blah. So what happens here? And this is not my first rodeo with this, okay? So you have a violent act that happens, and Republicans and Democrats get together, and so the politicians, the entrenched group in there, it's like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Okay, so we're going to come out with this. They're going to all get around a podium. They're going to slap each other on the back and say, good job, good job, good job. And that's going to be the end of it. It's feel-good legislation, and it's one of my big pet peeves with any governmental body that will pass anything that doesn't do anything. But it's feel-good legislation.
It does do some stuff that is bad. You know, I mean, do you think this is going to pass? First of all, I think it should be, you know,
Well, they've got Republicans on board. I think they can get it through the House, definitely, because it's a simple majority there. And Biden he wants to sign anything that makes him look good.
Right.
So this will probably get enacted. So what does it mean as a practical matter? Law-abiding gun owners will do what the legislation says because they are law-abiding people. Criminals who are not going to read this will still act like criminals.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, some of the stuff, it's all troubling, really. And there was 10 Republicans that voted for it.
All they need.
In the Senate. And I'm going to put their names up on the screen because all of those 10 Republicans should be primaried as far as I'm concerned. That's my personal opinion. But
one of them's Roy Blunt, by the way, who's not running again.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's why he's not running again. But, you know, there's some troubling stuff. I mean, the red flag laws, for example. We've talked about this before, and I may have brought this up previously or not, but my biggest concern with that is, like, who gets to decide what the parameters are that constitute somebody taking your guns away? You know, I mean, look at how conservatives are treated in this country in terms of people being denied access to banking, in terms of people being put on no-fly lists, in terms of people being, called racist, domestic terrorists. I mean, even members of Congress, they went after Marjorie Taylor Greene and tried to prevent her from running for re-election. So are we really willing to give these people power to determine, you know, who's a quote-unquote danger to society? If you post a spicy right-wing meme on Twitter or Telegram or something, they're going to come to your house and take your guns away?
Well, I don't think it's that simple. I hope it's not. I haven't read the legislation. I don't know, but here's how.
I'm just asking the question, where is this authority coming from?
Well, in a perfect world, let's say I thought you were a danger. So I call the cops and I say, I think Kurt's a danger, and here's why I think he's a danger. Then the police maybe go and have a conversation with you. And if they determine that you are a danger, Okay, then it goes to court. I mean, that's how this country's supposed to work. There's supposed to be, due process.
That's how it's supposed to work, but that's not how it is currently working. We have people who are in solitary confinement for a year and a half for walking into the Capitol.
With a Confederate flag.
Yeah, right, with a Confederate, yeah. Oh, important caveat. Thanks for pointing that out. I mean, we have, look at COVID. We had police knocking on businesses, shutting down businesses because of COVID for not.
You're asking what would pass
restrictions.
Congress that would get 10 Republicans to be on board.
We
hope that would be part
We
of it.
have Democrat-funded, George Soros-funded DAs in many major cities that are releasing criminals back into. I mean,
one just got recalled in San Francisco, so I'm trying to put some hope at the end of this.
I understand, but what I'm saying is that like you're pointing at this like ideal scenario of how it should work, and I agree. If that's how it was, if that's how our law enforcement actually functioned in the proper way that it's supposed to, then maybe there would at least be a conversation there where we can say, okay, where do we draw the line? What constitutes a legitimate threat? What constitutes a legitimate reason to take someone's guns away? But that's not the reality of what we're living with.
What I'm tired of dealing with is after one of these mass shootings, hearing, oh yeah, we knew that guy was a problem, and he's allowed to do whatever he does.
Well, he's not allowed to. I mean, it's still illegal.
Clearly, he did it, right?
Right, but I mean, even
nobody stopped him beforehand.
Right, but it's still like this idealized version of what could be done. Like, for example, in Buffalo, the guy in Buffalo had warning signs all over the place.
Authorities confirming this wasn't the suspect's first run-in with trouble. Last June, state police say he made a threatening statement at his high school, Susquehanna Valley. School officials alerted police, which resulted in a mental health evaluation. Authorities say he was released shortly later.
They have red flag laws in New York. They have assault weapons bans in New York. They have magazine capacity bans in New York, and none of that stopped him. He lied on the background check. They had the red flag laws. Nobody enacted him. Nobody did anything about it. And he went and killed a bunch of people. Yeah. So it's just like pie in the sky stuff that is, like you said, only going to affect law-abiding citizens. Right. And then my concern is with the red flag laws, it's going to disproportionately affect conservative people because that's who is currently being targeted by the political establishment. And it's just going to be a tool to go after those people.
Well, we can see how all this is going to work a little bit closer to home because there's the kid who shot up Olathe East High School, wounded 2 people. He has been charged with attempted capital murder, Now, how will that be handled? By the Johnson County DA. And the Johnson County DA really ought to look towards San Francisco to see that we're tired of this bullshit where you're like, oh, he was abused as a child and blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. He's 18 years old, and he took a gun to a high school and shot it up.
Yeah.
Okay? Throw the book at him.
Yeah.
This gets back to when we first started talking about guns on this podcast. I told you talk about my ideal world. It's like if you commit a crime with a gun, there is a maximum minimum that you've got to serve. And if you murder someone, not shot somebody and killed them in self-defense, not any of those caveats. If you have committed clear-cut murder and you are convicted of it, you go away and you never get out of the box. Mm-hmm. Ever get out of the box. If we do that, we clean this up in one generation. Because trust me, if we take a generation of people who would do shit like this and we put them away and we never let them out, this is done.
Yeah, it's one part of a many-pronged approach, and I agree with you. I think that would be a step in the right direction. But there are other things that we need to address too. We need to address the cultural aspects of this as well. Everyone's afraid of guns. Nobody wants to touch guns. We need to bring back gun education. We need to teach people that guns are a tool that can be used for good as well as evil. We need to eliminate gun-free zones. You can pull research from John Lott, crimeresearch.org, someone I quote many, many times, that 96% of public mass shootings in America have happened in gun-free zones.
Wonder why that is,
yes.
Right? Because if you want to commit mayhem like that, are you going to look for a place where there might be good guys with guns?
Yeah.
Or where, oh, look at that, gun-free zone.
Yeah, and speaking of the gun-free zone and good guy with a gun thing, that was another question that I had for people on Saturday that nobody had an answer for is, they're like, well, people say that it takes a good guy with a gun to stop a bad guy with a gun. That's
does.
BS. And I'm like, so then what does it take? What's the answer? And they're like, well, in Texas, nobody went in. And I'm like, yeah, that proves my point. There was not a good guy with a gun there because the cops showed up and didn't do anything.
Yeah. You got to think like a criminal.
Yeah.
Think like a criminal. So a criminal looks at a gun-free zone as a soft target.
Yeah.
Okay, that's, I don't know how you can make it any simpler
We
than
have
that.
a meme on our meme board right there specifically for this issue.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. All right, so again, we're going to be at Funhouse Pizza, 50 Highway in Lee Summit next Tuesday, June 21st. Not sure when you hear the podcast, but June 21st at 5 p.m. Jim Dingman, who is one of our fine sponsors, is going to be there. So is Bob Watson from State Farm Insurance Agency. He's going to be there. Your local State Farm agent, Bob Watson. Great guy, and he can't wait to talk to everybody who's going to show up. So I hope we have a big crowd.
Yeah. Yeah, we're promoting it. We're telling all of our friends. We're inviting people on Facebook. And I believe you can invite people on Facebook too if you're listening to this. And if for some reason you can't figure that out, just share the event. Go to the event on Facebook, share it to your page, send it to your friends. You can send it in a private message. You can copy the link and just tell your friends about it. Bring out a lot of people.
All right. Before we go, AAA Roadside Assistance calls, maybe you've seen this, are up at record levels because people are running out of gas. With the high gas prices, people are trying to get that last little ounce out, and they're running out of gas. Record numbers for this, by the way.
Oh, man.
Leads me to my prediction here. 3 days, gas has been level at $5.01 as a national average. I mean, it was going up in leaps and bounds. Over the last weekend, it went over $5 a gallon. It's at $5.01. So at some point, it's going to go the other way. It's going to come back down. Here's my prediction. When it gets to a certain level, Joe Biden will go in front of the cameras or he'll have his spokesmodel go out and take credit for record gas price reduction. It's never happened before.
They literally did that already earlier
might
in the
wanna
presidency. Well, there was a period where it was going up and up and up, and then it went down by 10 cents or something like that. And the White House or whoever it was in the government, I forget who exactly, they put out a graph, and the graph is 2 weeks of gas prices, and you see it going up and then coming down at the end. And they're like, we lowered gas prices.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, it went down by 10 cents, and then it goes straight back up after that.
But he's got the headroom to make it a record. I mean, it could come down $3.
Right. Well, it's just like he created record job growth. It's the same thing. It's the same, manipulation of the language and logic. Or, the even funnier one that they did was, I think it was last year, around the holidays. Remember they were talking about you can save 16 cents on your Thanksgiving dinner this year or something like that?
I did.
That was
see
a good one too.
Yeah. So those are the kinds of things we'll be talking about live. We're going to keep it very civil. Even if you don't agree, we would love to have you there so that we can talk about these things. We can talk and it can be civil. It doesn't have to be toxic because in Dale Carter's America, we don't like toxicity.
That's right.
Is that a word? Toxicity?
Yeah.
It is a word.
It's a word.
All right. On that note, this is Dale Carter's America.
The views expressed on Dale Carter's America are Dale's and Kurt Wheeler's. They do not necessarily reflect the views of KFKF or Steel City Media. Comments can be sent to dalecartersamerica@gmail.com. Check back for weekly episodes. Subscribe, spread the word, and give us a 5-star review. Thanks for being a part of Dale Carter's America.